you don't have anything clear and defined to hold on to. It's just this feeling that you have in the pit of your stomach as those days and months and years go by, thinking, okay, this isn't happening for me. Or this seems like it may never happen. And when do I start pivoting, and how do I pivot? How do I change what my hope was, or what my idea was, into something completely different?
Hi, I'm Lydia Thompson, and I am the host of Counselor Off the Clock and a licensed counselor. My aim is to make mental health conversations more accessible and to keep you company while you grow. On this episode, we are talking about grief and loss, yay, with Shara Carter, spending time exploring what we end up calling undefined grief, which isn't connected to a death or a clear loss. We talk about loss of hopes and dreams and how to make space for that grief. I think you'll really connect with this episode. If you are loving this podcast, subscribe, give us a rating. If this reminds you of a friend or a family member, please share. You can find us on Instagram and TikTok at Counselor Off the Clock. I hope you can get comfortable because we are off the clock. Shara, thank you so much for being here. We have a Shara today, the owner of Shara Smiles. And as you can see her gorgeous smile, or if you're listening, you can hear the smile through the microphone.
Let's hope. And it's one smile.
Just one smile.
Yeah, it's Share a Smile.
Share a smile.
Share a smile.
I don't know how long I've known you, but I never knew that was actually.
I mean, it would make sense that people would think it would be more than one smile, but it's Share a Smile.
Share a smile. That is actually so precious. Share a smile.
Yeah. So I'm hoping that I share my smile with my clients so that they can find their smile and then turn around and share their smile with others.
That is so cheesy, but I love it. I love it so
Hopefully
much.
just cheesy enough to stick.
Just cheesy enough to stick. Exactly. Shara is a counselor just like me. And can you tell the people, the good people, who you see?
I see teenagers. I see adult men and women. And I see couples.
So Shara and I met at a therapist, Williamson County therapist meetup. And that is actually where we just came from.
Yes.
So oftentimes I start this podcast and start even my sessions with, how are you really today?
So I'm really relaxed.
Really?
Yes, our friend Victoria Valdez was at our meeting this morning, and she did a lens neurofeedback example, and I was a guinea pig and got to experience a lens neurofeedback session, and it was really interesting and very, relaxing and calming. And not that I was a skeptic, because I know what she does is very valid, but I was just very curious, like, how is that going to impact me? And it was really cool.
That's so awesome.
So
if you didn't listen to that episode, go check it out. It was the episode on trauma. As I keep saying, trauma, yay! And I feel kind of the same about today. I'm like, grief and loss, yay! Like, I'm so excited to dig into grief and loss. But also, that's heavy.
Yeah.
That's a heavy topic.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think if there's anything else you want to talk about that's not related to grief and loss. Or do we just want to jump right into the topic?
I say we just jump right in.
It is a big topic.
Yeah. Very broad.
Can you define for our listeners grief?
Well, I think the second word, loss,
and loss,
is the first step of grief, right? It's when you lose someone or something, and the feelings that come up after that loss, and what is it, and trying to wrap your brain around the loss, and trying to figure out how to have life after that loss, and to just restructure everything in your world after that loss. So I think the loss piece of grief is huge.
Yeah. We didn't talk about this before the podcast. I am wondering how you feel about the stages of grief. That's often how people get introduced to grief.
Right. So actually I wrote a blog about this, the topic that we're talking about today. And that's why I thought, oh yeah, maybe that's what we should talk about. Because I often do work with clients that have lots of different kinds of grief and loss. And in my blog, that's kind of the first paragraph is often we think of the 5 stages of grief and loss. I mean, and as counselors, that's, the Kubler-Ross's 5 stages of grief and loss. And my dad, who passed away, when he called me and told me that he had cancer, he said, I think, and he was a very dry humor guy. Yeah. He's like, I think I'm going through the first stage, Shara, which is denial. And he was like making a joke because of the Nile. So he's like, I'm in that first stage, denial. So yes, I think sometimes if you have a bit of education or knowledge or have read up, maybe that's the first thing that you think of, which is the 5 stages of grief and loss.
Yeah, I mean, I literally was listening or watching a recent episode of Survivor, and they were like, here's the 5 stages of grief, like shown on the screen as somebody's getting voted out. And in the educational work I've done around grief, it's like, it's not really a linear process.
No, not
and from
at all.
anybody who's gone through grief, it's like, these are things you could experience. You don't have to experience them. And you can get to acceptance and then jump right back into denial.
Right.
And so I think that's the biggest misconception around the stages is like they lead you to acceptance. And then you're there. You have arrived at acceptance of grief.
And it's not that at all. It's not linear and it's not cyclical. So you can bounce back, you can go from one step to the next and not necessarily not the next step, but you can jump from one to another and it not necessarily be that linear or that cyclical. So, I like to think of the process of grief like our fingerprints. No one's process is like anyone else's process. Yeah. I think it does help a great deal to be connected to other people who have experienced or are experiencing grief, because to be able to hear other people's, you can have similar experiences and be able to feel like you're connected to somebody, and you're not alone in the way you feel. But then you also realize how very different everybody's process is, so that your process is really okay however it looks. And I do think that that's what makes it complicated too, because it's not similar to anybody else's.
And so you can't say like, oh, I'm doing better at this grief process. I'm moving through it like this other person, or at least have a template. Right. Don't we wish we had a template going through grief?
I think that's where the 5 stages can be helpful, because at least it gives you some pinpointing ideas or concepts of, oh, maybe that's where I am right now. Maybe that's how I'm feeling right now. And, that's a part of the process. So
yeah, it can be a part of the process. It can help label things. But that does not mean you're just gonna, I'm going through step 1, step 2.
Right.
Don't I wish it was that simple?
Right.
Tell me why this topic matters to you.
So I feel very strongly about grief and loss, and it's not about death and dying. So there are all different kinds of loss. And I think the type of loss that we miss in society, actually, and it happened in my life, we may not identify it or we may not think it's valid or valuable, is when someone hasn't died or you really haven't lost something that you had, but you lose something that you never had, but you always wanted.
Can you give us some examples of those things? That it's not about a death of a person or a loss of a job?
Right. So it could be the loss of a hope, the loss of a dream, the loss of a vision, the loss of an idea. So if you think about having children and never being able to have your own children, you know, wanting to go on an expedition or making a plan for an athletic event or graduation or a major life event that you've worked very, very hard for, and then something happens and it comes crashing down, and that event never happens. So I think dreams and hopes and ideas and visions not coming to fruition and having something happen in your life to where it's not a possibility at all.
Yeah. This is a complicated topic for me, and it's a complicated topic to unpack, but I think I've been experiencing that entering into motherhood, this abstract grief, that there is this bundle of joy. I adore her so much, but there are things that are lost in my journey into motherhood. I will never be the person I was ever again. That person that I was before having a child is not there anymore. And the things that I could easily do while not having a child, like my husband and I love hosting game nights. And it's
life
so
as you know it.
Much more complicated now. It's like logistics of it all, just so we could have like one game night.
Yeah.
And I think I'm grieving the ease of not having a child, being like, without a child. And I don't think that takes away from the beauty and joy of this new life that I have, but it's complicated. And it is, I guess, can you talk about what's the difference between grief and sadness?
I just think grief goes down so much deeper, and it touches a deeper place in our being. So we can have sadness at a lot of different levels, and I think grief is the deepest part of sadness, the lowest part of sadness.
Yeah, it involves sadness,
right? And I think grief then can wrap itself around different parts of us, different parts of our brain, different parts of our physical being, right? So when we're grieving, like, you're tired, and being tired can be a symptom of a lot of different things, but definitely along with grief and sadness, like, just things seem very, very difficult and hard to do. Being able to, like, even find a smile, being able to find that spark of joy inside of you, and doing simple, basic things like, taking a shower, or, going out grocery shopping, or, like putting your kids' lunches together. It's just really difficult to do the simple things in life. And that's where, like, grief kind of has these tentacles that explore inside of you and find different ways to kind of wrap around and pull you down.
Yeah. I find that, grief is a really, I don't know, like a deep down process. Is there beauty in grief? Like, what's the point of grieving? Why even, actually, here's a better question. Why even feel it?
I don't think we have a choice. I do think sometimes people are really good at masking.
Yes.
Right? Because sometimes we just have to get up and go to work, and we have to make the kids' lunches, and we have to get in the shower. We have to get out of bed. So we become, great at acting. Right. So So when I say we don't have a choice, it's still there, whether we're masking it or not. It's going to be there. And it is better to be able to accept it and take time with that grief after you get through the things that you have to get through in the day. Or sometimes I tell my clients to, like schedule some time.
Grief time.
Yeah. So, no, you can't fall into a puddle in the middle of your corporate meeting, but when you come home from work, you got to make some time to maybe get in the bathtub and, have a good cry or read a book or listen to that music. Maybe it's in the car if it's safe. I know I had some moments when my dad passed away of pancreatic cancer. And when I was driving and I had moments in the car just weeping uncontrollably, it was not safe. Right. And it occurred to me in those moments, like, I cannot do this right now. This is not safe. But finding those times where it is safe and you have safe people around you or no one around you, whatever you're comfortable with, and being able to take that time, it's really important. So I guess we don't have to face it, but it's better to face it. Yeah.
I think here's the conundrum is grief doesn't always just get better. Even with feeling it, it's still there. We talk about a lot of emotions, feel it and then it kind of dissipates, like anxiety or even depression. It's feel it, go there, and then you feel better. And with grief, that's not always the case.
No, I do think that in the moment it can release a little bit of that tension, right? Just giving yourself some space to have the feeling, the heaviness. You still carry the heaviness. You still carry the sadness. And that's where, time is somewhat helpful. It gives you a distance away from the moment if it was a loss of a person or something. Getting some space from that moment can be very helpful, but taking those episodes, taking that time when you can in order to, feel it as much as you can. Yeah. In the moment.
I'm thinking about, a lot of people know they have grief, right? Because they have a clear loss. How would someone know that they have, what would you call it? An undefined loss?
Right. Well, you used a word. You used a word with what you were going through that I loved. I'm like, I haven't ever heard that term. We'll have to rewind.
I know.
I was going to say. Well, the grief and loss that's not connected to a definitive person or thing or event that you once had, and experiencing a loss of maybe something over time. For me, it was not being able to have my own children. And that's why this is a topic that's very near and dear to me. Because over time, I had to realize that what I was going through is I was grieving the loss of being able to have my own children. And how do you even hold on to that? Because you don't know until the day your body says, all right, this is not a possibility anymore for you. You don't know. You're always holding out hope. So, you may not know you're going through grief and loss. And that's why the topic is important to me, because if, let's say you get divorced and your life as you had planned it in your head with this spouse and with your children has now all that future has come crumbling down. Or if you break up with a boyfriend or a girlfriend, or if you're, if an engagement is broken, or, there are, or the job that you had been working for, or the security clearance, or the military position that you were hoping for, you don't have anything clear and defined to hold on to. It's just this feeling that you have in the pit of your stomach as those days and months and years go by, thinking, okay, this isn't happening for me. Or this seems like it may never happen. And when do I start pivoting, and how do I pivot? How do I change what my hope was, or what my idea was, into something completely different? And you have to, just like a death with a person, you have to you're wrapping your brain around. It's very difficult for your brain to understand this, what the new normal is.
Yeah.
What your new future might look like, because you've spent so much time and energy and passion building up this thing, in your head, and now it's gone. And grappling with the goneness is step one. And then grappling with, what do I do now?
Yeah. What do I do?
Yeah. What in the world do I do now? And I also think that folks who are going through like empty nest, I have a lot of couples who and women who, once their children have left, right? It's that new normal of, who am I now? I mean, I'm still a mother, but I'm a mother without any children in my home.
And what does that mean?
Yeah. And I've been this person raising these and having these people around and having my family around me. And I know what my life looks like with that, but I don't know who I am without all these people in my home and with all this activity and with all my energies going towards building these people into who they're supposed to become. So what is life now? Right? So there's so many different facets.
I mean, this almost seems like grief could almost be, I don't want to say anything, but anything. Because it could be a change in identity, or a change in expectations, a change in hope.
Yes.
And those big changes that throw us off kilter, that we have to now recenter our lives around, that can involve grief work.
Right.
Now, if you're working with a therapist already, your therapist has already probably identified, hey, we've got some grief. May not have even said the words grief, but when I'm working with clients, I'm like, oof, okay, we've had actually some loss.
Yes. Yeah. And don't you love it when we're able to go, I label it for them?
Yeah.
Like I'm so, because in my situation, like before I went to, I call it counselor school. Before I went to counselor school, and I was dealing with my stuff, like there was no one there to label it for me and say that it's okay. It's okay that you're super sad and that you don't want to go to work any day. This makes a lot of sense. So isn't it wonderful when we can do that for our clients?
Yeah. Well, I liked what you were saying. We were talking a little bit before cameras were rolling about the space that loss holds in communities. And when we look at this undefined loss.
That's what you called it.
Undefined loss?
I think you said undefined. I think that was it. Maybe.
I don't know.
We'll have to find it.
Well, yeah, we'll figure it out.
Roll tape.
In my mind, it's called an undefined loss.
Undefined loss. It was either that. Well, we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out.
Yeah. So can you talk about that the difference in our communities?
So, yes. So I think what happens in our communities and our connections is when we have the defined loss, it's very easy to identify, and it's easy for the people around us to see, oh, he just lost his wife, or she lost her husband, or, their house burned in a fire. Like, we're going to rally and we're going to do the food train, and we're going to send the cards, and we're going to, ask how can we help? But when you have, and those are best case scenarios, not everybody has has communities that work like that. But hopefully, people do have communities, and those are best case scenarios where you've got people surrounding you and supporting you in the losses. And there's so many people that don't have that. So another topic. But when you have that undefined loss, and it's the loss of a hope or loss of a dream, and it's kind of like a vapor in the mist, right? Like nobody knows really it's happening. Nobody, people in your community.
There's no food train.
There's no food train.
There's no food train on loss of a hope.
Right. There might be some cards, but it's definitely, you have to like think about it a little bit more. And
you'd have to share that with somebody.
Right. And I think so many times people keep these kinds of things to themselves, or, definitely not like telling their whole community, where a death of somebody in someone's family is more widely known, because other people are experiencing that loss too when someone dies. Yeah. Like the community has experienced a loss. Right. Whereas if it's something that someone is working towards or hoping for or building their life around, it's not really impacting as many other people. So there's not that support system around, which can make it even more difficult, because then you feel isolated, you feel alone. Maybe
that's exactly what I was thinking. I was like, gosh, grief is already hard enough. Yeah. Having isolation layered on top of grief. I mean, that's going to be that much harder to feel and work through.
Right. And I think that is another part of the layer of grief, like that grief at the core is the isolation and feeling alone, even in a defined or an undefined grief place. You were asking about, what is that feeling? It's, I think when you're feeling isolated, feeling alone, like nobody understands this, it cuts even deeper. Yeah. And so connecting with people, talking to people, that's why coming to a counselor can be so helpful, right? Because then you've got someone in front of you saying, this is what you're feeling is normal. What you're feeling is okay. There's so many other people going through this. Whether it's the counselor's experience or the counselor being able to point things out in your own life, saying, it's okay, you're not alone, and being able to sit with your client and a client feeling like, okay, someone's,
so sorry.
That's okay. Someone's with this, being a witness too. So it's, when you're working with a counselor, just having someone be witness to, right? And so sometimes when we're in that grief space, we don't really need someone to really understand us, but sometimes we just need somebody to sit with us and be witness to our sadness, and so that we know that someone is a kind of a part of our process. Can be helpful.
Just a little bit less alone.
Yeah.
So if people are listening to this and going, ooh, I have a loss of a dream, a loss of a hope. It sounds like, I'll pass it back off to you. What directive would you give them? Where to start?
I think first, being able to recognize, being able to pinpoint and say, I have loss in my life. Second, being able to talk to somebody, anybody that you think is safe for you to say, yeah, you have a loss in your life. I have so many great people in my life. And one of my great friends, I'm the therapist. Like, I should know all the things, right? But I called her. Perhaps I already knew, like I was dealing with some loss in this moment, but I was talking to her and she was like, Shara, you're dealing with loss. And, she's got a lot of great therapy under her belt. She's done a lot of great therapy, and just hearing someone else tell me that was what I was dealing with, it was just so relieving, like validating. Yeah. Validating. So recognizing it, being able to talk about it, with someone who will be validating for you and say, yes, that's what you're going through and it's okay.
Yeah.
Like, I'll listen. I'll be on your journey with you if you need me to be on your journey. And then giving yourself the time, like I was saying, like if you need to, like carving out that time, asking for what you need from the people around you. If you need, your significant other to, take the kids or, or take the dogs or whatever it is and say, I just need some quiet time, or I need to go to a hotel and I need to have some space. I need to go on my walk. I need to have my headphones. Being able to really find the people that can support you while you take care of yourself. Yeah. Of course, I'm always going to say, find a good therapist.
Yeah. I mean, it's always the message.
Grief share too. Grief share. Now, grief share groups will probably be more surrounded around the identifiable loss, as opposed to, what are we calling it? The undefined, the defined versus the undefined.
Yeah.
So, the loss of the dreams or the loss of the hopes. You may not really hear people talking about those in the grief and loss groups. You might.
Yeah. But plenty of people can relate.
Mm-hmm.
I do want to shift the topic a little bit, if that's okay with you. Because I experienced this after having 2 deaths in my family in the past couple of years, that people really wanted to help. And often, when I'm in the middle of my grief process, it just wasn't helpful. The messages were not helpful. She's in a better place. He's not suffering anymore. Aren't you even thankful that you knew them? Like trying to, it seemed to
make
me, make it better.
Yeah.
Can you speak to how you could support someone who is in the middle of an undefined or defined loss?
Right.
What would be helpful? What would not be helpful?
I always like to approach with questions, not like too many pelting questions, like you're having an interview.
Yeah.
But I do think approaching with like, how can I help?
I mean, in that moment, like, I didn't know.
Don't know. Right.
I don't know.
So
I have all these big feelings, know.
Right.
And wow. Now I'm not getting choked up. I literally am getting
choked
up. So many people were like, how can I help? And I'm like,
I don't know.
Leave me alone. I don't know. I don't know what I need. I just know that I'm in pain.
Right. So I think the next step is to say, I'm here. I'm here.
Yeah.
I can give you some ideas. If, I can come over and I can fold laundry. I can come over and I can walk the dogs for you. I can take the kids. These are just some ideas that I can, do your dishes.
Yeah. Definitely some choices.
Right.
I had a friend who was like, I can do this or I can do this.
Yes. Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's so much easier. Or
yeah.
Do you want to talk about it or not talk about it?
Right. So, and that's kind of like the questions.
Yeah.
So what do you need? And if it's like, I have no idea, giving a couple options to say, these are 2 things, especially if you're offering, really thinking about like, what would I like to do for this person? My gifts, my skills. Like, I love making that casserole that I make. Like, so I can bring you my casserole, but I can come and I can do your laundry too. Like, or I can do your laundry at your house. I can take your laundry and I can do it at my house. All right. So let me know. Like, those are the 3 things that are my ideas right now. The other thing I think is always just listening. I'm here to listen. I'm here to listen. Or I'm here to just be quiet.
Yeah.
Like, it's again, being the witness too, and being a part of the journey. And sometimes being a part of the journey is being silent. sometimes just having someone present is enough.
Yeah, I think it's helpful when I'm sitting with clients, but even just in my own process, I didn't need anybody to make it smaller for me.
Right.
And I also didn't need anybody to make it bigger.
That's huge. It's like the whole fixing it thing.
Yeah.
Like you know, when people cry, I think as a society, what?
I just, been there.
Yeah. As a society, I don't know why we're so uncomfortable with tears.
Okay. Yeah.
Right? Like, why do tears? Well, because that means they're feeling bad. And if they're feeling bad, I need to make them feel better. But as therapists, we also know feelings aren't good or bad. Feelings are, it's information, right? And so in that moment, if you're tearful, I'd see that as very positive. Like, you need to have your moment of tears. And so if someone's sitting with me and they're crying, I'm going to be glad that they're having a moment to cry.
And I'm not going to say, hey, stop crying.
Yeah, no.
Stop crying. Let me give you tissue. Let me give you a bottle of water. But
I mean, I do think tissues are helpful.
Yeah,
like, when you got the snot and you got the tears,
yeah.
like some tissues are good.
But not like suck it up.
Right. No. Like
I'm here for you. Keep crying if you need to.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
I'm here for you and I'm here no matter what.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Whatever comes up.
Right.
And as we know in grief, sometimes it is on the floor crying.
Right.
And sometimes it's zoning out.
Right.
Sometimes it's numbness.
Right. Sometimes it's just like, I just need to watch a movie and not talk about it and not talk about you or not talk about me. Another client I had just like, I'm tired of telling the story over and over and over and over again. So there's like a wearing out, and that's in that defined space. I'm so worn out from like having to tell everybody all the things about how I feel or how everything's going and the situation that happened.
And so a way to support a person would be, you can talk about it or you can not talk about it.
Right.
And I don't have to ask you.
Right.
I don't actually have to ask you about the loss.
Right.
For you to know, hey, I know. I know you experienced a loss. And I'm here for you in whatever way you need to show up today.
So in even just touching base in small ways, so consistent small ways rather than like the big, huge, flower arrangement or the big, huge casseroles and all the meal trains, sometimes just, hey, good morning. I'm thinking of you. Hey, good morning. Let me know if you need anything. Hey, good evening. If we need to schedule something, I'm available this week.
Yeah. Just
those small little reminders that you're on my mind.
Yeah. Well, because a lot of times when the loss happens, there can be a big show of support right when the loss happens.
Right.
But as we know, the loss continues.
Yes.
Can you speak to what the longevity of grief?
Right. Well, it can go on and on and on and on and on and on and on.
Yeah.
It can go on. And I think it does morph over time. When you get the space, it morphs over time. It starts looking different. Oh my gosh, just every type of loss, in my mind, I'm just thinking of all the different types of losses that we have that we could be grieving over. And there's just too many. So it's going to morph over time. It's going to change over time, and it's going to change based on what happened, who or what, defined, undefined. So being able to be consistent and persistent with people and just checking in, because over time, some people might be like, yeah, I'm good, depending on what it is, right? Depending on what happened. I'm good. I've processed this.
Yeah.
I'm feeling better about this. I don't have the sadness that comes up and the tears that come, and I can talk about it. And if you come to that place, yeah, that's a great place. It may not look like that for everyone. And I don't think we need to like put ourselves on a timetable or I should be,
It's been a year.
Yeah.
I should be over it.
Oh yeah. No.
It's been, you can say any amount of years.
Right.
20 years. You don't ever have to be over it.
Right.
You don't ever have to be over it.
Right.
The grief will look different.
Yeah.
You will probably never get over it.
Right. Yeah.
That's not an option.
Right.
For a lot of grief.
Right. It will look different.
Yes.
Right. So their sadness will have, different impacting, the experiences that you have in life that might be maybe take you back to that person or that place. Mm-hmm. They impact you in different ways over time. But yeah, I don't know if you like getting over it is a great word.
I don't think you do.
I don't think it's a good phrase.
Yeah, it just
maybe
changes.
It just changes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was I thinking? Okay. Yeah, so you were talking about then checking in long term, right? Mm-hmm. Not the big show in the very beginning. Not as a show,
but
just
checking in, being persistent and consistent.
Consistent over a longer period of time. Mm-hmm. What we also know about grief is that it will show up at anniversaries.
Yes.
And at any other life turning point.
Yeah.
So let's just say a birth.
Yeah.
Or a marriage.
Yeah.
Or another year.
Yeah.
Another Christmas without them.
Yeah.
And so you can expect that grief is going to change and show up differently.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Can you speak to that?
Well, I'm glad you brought it up because to kind of make a mental note that all of these events will be trigger points just to know, that it's okay and it makes sense. Mm-hmm. That and you might want to make a plan, So I've had clients like get like a rock with a word or a name or a phrase on it and like create like a little rock garden. Mm-hmm. Because they know when these events come up, they're going to want a memory. They're going to want to kind of celebrate or remember that person, the life, the experience, the hope. So finding something that's representative to you. Mm-hmm. I have a friend who, with her dad on his birthday after he passed, she would make little gifts and hand them out to homeless people, or she would make little gifts and hand them out to children, because he did a lot of work with giving to others, and she knew that these were things that her dad would love and he would be doing. So she would do these little things to remember him on his special days, which would give her joy in kind of helping him live out his legacy. So there's a lot of different, or going to a place, right? Having these kind of markers to say, this is how I remember this person. This is how I take time and honor their life. But also being able to honor yourself if it's a less defined loss, to be able to honor yourself or honor the dream that you lost. One thing that I was thinking about as we were talking is when COVID happened and we had so many events that couldn't happen. So we had graduates that didn't have a traditional graduation. They didn't have a traditional prom. They didn't have... This
is such a great point. If you lived through COVID-19, you have experienced grief.
Exactly.
And loss.
Exactly. Yep.
So welcome. Get comfy in it because we're all there.
Right. So many people lost so much. And I don't even think people realized how much loss there was.
Yeah.
Because it was, there was death. But there were other things that were happening that wasn't a death.
Yeah. Loss of freedoms.
Yes.
Loss of toilet paper.
Yeah.
Loss of ease of life,
connecting with our communities, right? Doing daily routine, weekly things that we're used to doing that kind of mark, the end of the week, like going out with your friends or going to church.
I am wondering if you have found a way to, like you were talking about, kind of memorialize your loss.
I like to tell my clients that surrogates are a beautiful thing in your life, and surrogates are healing and healthy and hopeful. So for me, I have kids in my life and teenagers in my life and so many surrogate children that I have adopted into my world. Wow. And I've been gifted with a lot of friends who understand or want to understand my loss. Mm-hmm. So they've been so generous in lending me their children. Yeah. So I'm Auntie Shara to so many. Mm-hmm. And that's just, it's fabulous. It really meets a need. So, and then there are other things too. But I'm able to attend the birthday parties and go to like the graduations and the proms and, live out little moments, little glimmers.
Yeah. I think that's a beautiful thing when we can take our loss and then shift it. Mm-hmm. To go, I'm going to live out his dream, of feeding homeless people. Mm-hmm. I'm going to now, okay, I'm childless, but I'm going to be in children's lives. Mm-hmm. And you are probably a super safe person for all these kiddos. And what a beautiful thing that you get to be there for them.
Right.
And this loss has now opened up new avenues for you. Now, does it take away from the loss to go, just look at what you've done, right? Look, but it's fine, right? You've done. No, that sucks.
Yeah.
That's so hard. And look at this beautiful thing that you have.
Right.
And that I'm so glad that you do have.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for a lot of people, this is how you might know you are, your grief is transforming. Mm-hmm. Is it actually looks like beauty in your life.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I also feel like, I have such a privilege and honor, I say, to link arms with parents in the work that I do, because I've had so much experience with little people and young people and their families since I was, in college and even before college. When I was high school, I was working with kids. So, cause that was my, that's what I was going to do. I was going to go be a mom. So I have all this experience with young people, with families, with couples, that now I feel very privileged to be able to link arms with parents and in working with their young people and bringing families together and couples together. So I love my work. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's such a beautiful thing too, is like out of your loss and out of your grief, actually you are able to help heal other people. Yeah. And sit with other people.
It's powerful. It's really powerful.
It is really
powerful. Because I've experienced what I've experienced, like I said to a client the other day, you cannot empathize if you are cut off from your own feelings. If you don't know how you feel, if you don't feel like everybody feels, I think some of us are better actors than others. Mm-hmm. And I really have a heart for men in our culture, because I think traditionally men in our culture are not really allowed to express their feelings. But Right. So if you're cut off from your feelings or you're not allowing yourself to feel your feelings, then you can't empathize with others. And that lessens your relationships. Your relationships are going to be weaker. And so if you want to have a strong marriage, if you want to have a great relationship with your kids, you yourself have to know how to feel. So I'm grateful, right? I feel like in life, all of our life experiences can be used for the betterment of the world around us. And so because I have gone through the life experience that I have and have felt the things that I feel that absolutely helps me in my work to be able to connect to people.
I totally agree. I look back on some of like the hardest moments of my life and I go, somehow I'm grateful for them. Because I mean, if anything, the work that I do.
I know it might kind of sound a little odd, but I am grateful. Yeah.
And not I'm like finding myself going, oh, that means you've processed your grief. It's like, no. Okay. The grief still exists.
Yeah, it's still
now
there.
Looks like this.
Right. It's definitely still there. Like there is a sadness in me, I think about, not having my own kids, but yeah, I have processed it. And while it's still in me, like, I think there's more like gratitude and joy of what I do have kind of sitting on top of it rather than, the grief being the absolute top of it, the top feeling that's like just ready to pour out. Right. Because I think, when we're sad, it's just like sitting right there. Yeah. It's just like waiting to come out. Or it might be like at the base of your stomach and then it overflows. But yeah, I feel like it's kind of deeper in a good kind of way with a lot of these like good feelings on top of it.
Integrated into who you are as a person.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah. I'm going to wait for you to drink your water.
Right. Big gulp.
What is anticipatory grief?
Wow. I haven't thought about that one. I would say when you know that something's going to happen to create a loss in your life, it's going to come. And you kind of make an emotional plan for it and you feel it before it's happening. And yeah, like the thing is still there. The person is still there. The plan is still there. The idea is still there. The vision is still there. But you have this knowledge, 100% knowledge or sinking feeling that maybe it's not going to happen or there is an absolute loss that's going to take place. And in thinking about that person being gone or that idea or dream being gone, and all those feelings come up and it's just like holy shit. That's the worst thing ever. Right. So that's when as a counselor, I would say, okay, it might feel very productive to prepare yourself in that way. And if you need to take some time to prepare yourself, I think that's our brain, like trying to conceptualize what is it going to be like? What do I need to do now before the thing happens? Right. So before my dad died, I remember every night I went to bed and I asked myself, what do I need to ask him? What do I need to talk to him about? What do I need to do? What do I need to say? Because I don't want to have any regret. So while we had him, every day I would go in and now does 3 weeks of trying to like make up for whatever I could have done before in my life. Like, no, there are definitely, if I would have, I don't know the conversations that I could have had or whatnot, but I know that in those 3 weeks I was very proactive and that helped me. It helped. I did the same kind of thing with my dog. I mean, not conversations, but I remember just thinking about, when my dog dies, like, loss of pets is a big one. So I did the same thing. Like I would think about what it's going to be like when he's gone. So I think there's definitely a place for that. But as a counselor, to be able to, and myself, to be able to kind of say, okay, what's the purpose? Let's make sure to give it a timeline. And if it's taking over too much space, then can we reel it back? Right? Let's live in the now.
Yeah.
And so if you're feeling like you need to make a plan and you need to try to start wrapping your brain around the what ifs of the situation, definitely take some time to think about it.
Yes.
There is a time and a place for that. But when that becomes too much of your time and your energy, and you're spending, every night at home thinking about the what ifs and the whens of this, thing that might happen, then we might need to look at how productive or unproductive that's being in your life.
Yeah. Anticipatory grief could be helpful.
Yes.
In helping you prepare.
Yes.
At the end of the day, nothing can prepare you for the loss.
Right. And let's stay in cognizant of the things that you have control over. What do you have control over today? And what can you do today? Yeah. Because there's only so much you can do.
I think with loss, death and dying, and grief, all of that bucket, I'm going to sound like an old country song here. I think it gives me gratefulness for current life.
Yeah.
It puts it into perspective that I could lose someone, or I could lose what I had hoped for, my plan for my life at any second. And so then what? Right. What now? Right. Well, I'm going to choose not to be paralyzed by that. I could be. Absolutely. But I'm choosing now to live like I was dying. No, I'm just, but it is kind of like, okay, well then it pushes me to the present. Yeah. To go, what relationships do I need to be working on? What conversations do I want to have? Knowing that none of this will last forever. Right. I will lose basically everything over my lifetime if I'm lucky. Yeah. And I just thought of a concept. The depth to which you grieve can be the equivalent to the depth of which you loved. Yeah. I think that sadness and loss can show up that way. Yeah, it can mirror the relationship or mirror the passion or the hope. It mirrors the thing that and the amount of hope and joy and excitement that you lived into that person, or you lived into that relationship, or you lived into that vision or goal in your life. Yeah, so the goal is to love big. And so if you're going to love big, you're going to lose big. And that is the acceptance point, that with love comes loss. Yeah. And so the with loss comes the feelings, the big feelings. The ones that we all would like to avoid. Right. The sick, icky feelings. But what that shows is that you're living. You're living. Yeah. You're living, even though the loss is huge. Yeah. You're going for it. Yeah. You're risking. Yeah. You're trying. Taking chances. And loss is a part of the human existence. And the more that you can make space for it and feel it, it doesn't make it better, but I think it does make your quality of life better. Yeah. Because the loss, any loss that you experience, there will be more loss coming if you're lucky. Yeah. Okay. Anything else you want to say? share.
I mean, we could
a smile.
we could keep talking.
I know.
There's so much to say.
know.
I'm thrilled with everything that we uncovered today.
I am too.
Yeah.
What a fun topic.
I mean,
Wow.
it's not fun. I think we ended on a really nice note because in looking at the depth of our grief and the depth of our sadness and loss, showing us the fullness of love that and hope and dreams and visions that are in our lives. Like, that's a great reframe.
Yeah.
A great way to look at losses in our lives.
Yeah.
So
I usually ask at the end, if somebody's just kind of zoned out, what could they take away? That is what they could take away.
That's our takeaway.
That's the takeaway.
That's our takeaway.
Where can the people find you?
So I am on Seaboard Lane in Cool Springs in Franklin, Tennessee. That's my office.
They're not going to drive there. Where could they find you?
Well, they can drive there. And they can also go to my website, www.sharasmile.com. It's SHARA. That's my first name.
Yeah.
Smile.com.
Wow.
Lots of good stuff on that website.
Yeah. And they can follow you on Instagram?
Yep.
Facebook?
My Instagram is smile.shara.
Yeah.
My Facebook is, do a search, Shara Smile LLC.
I'm going to put all of these in the show notes.
Okay.
How about that?
Thank
They
you.
can find you on the interwebs.
Yes.
On the socials.
All the socials. I have a YouTube channel.
You got a YouTube channel.
It's every other week right now. It might change to every week. It's called my Monday Mental Health Minute.
Oh, cute.
So, and that pops up on my socials. And so if you follow me, you'll get a fun little 1 minute reminder of something to think about in the week.
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate you being here. And
thanks for having me. This has been fun.
Unpacking a super fun topic. And to our listeners,
yes.
You can find us on Instagram and TikTok at Counselor Off the Clock. You can obviously find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, my house, you can find us wherever. Don't come and hunt me down. If you are liking this podcast, if you're really connecting with this, please give us a rating. Share with a friend. We are still a really new podcast. So if this is something that you think a friend really needs to hear, send this podcast to them. I hope you got comfortable because we are off the clock.